Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Welcome back. Another episode here of Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. And today we're talking about books and writing and lots of other stuff with the bubbly personality Darci Lang out of Regina, Saskatchewan. And how come you're writing books these days, Darci?
Oh, well, you know what? I'm so blessed to be writing books these days more than I've ever been writing books because, thank you, that's one, what I call 90% of COVID for sure, is that I'm not traveling, so I have more time to write than I ever have.
Darci Lang is based in southern Saskatchewan in Regina. She's an entrepreneur, a speaker, an author, has been described as someone with a bubbly personality, as we have just noticed. The book we're talking about today is called Focus on the 90%. It's one simple tool to change the way you view your life. But Darci, before we get into that, the specifics, tell us a little bit about your background. You were born and raised and educated. Where did all that take place?
Oh, I would love to do that. Well, this is my 28th year as a motivational speaker. So that's my day job, Dennis, and I'm 52 years old, so I've been a motivational speaker for a very long time. So incredibly proud to be from Saskatchewan and represent Saskatchewan on national stages across this country. So it's a very unique year for me because, like the world, I have been grounded for the last year, and honestly, there's been many 90% in that. But I'll give you the background, then I'll set up what the 90% concept is, please. I was born, as I said, 52 years ago in Biggar, right close to you there, Dennis. And I've had such a colorful, incredible life. And you know, Biggar's a very optimistic town to be born into, right?
Yes.
Because it thinks it's bigger than New York, right?
Right. New York is big, but this is bigger. Everybody around the world knows that saying.
It's unbelievable. I say I can speak in Victoria or Halifax, and somebody will yell out that sign. Like, doesn't the world shrink? It shrinks when we're from Saskatchewan, doesn't it?
Oh, yes.
So I was born to teenage parents, and my father actually raised me in the early 70s in Edmonton, and I get my entrepreneurial blood from my dad. My parents have both been married 3 times each. I have 10 half and step brothers and sisters, and so I grew up in and amongst 5 different families, and all the what I call 90% and 10% that went with that. And then when I was 18, I was a very hardy, resilient young woman, and I moved from Edmonton to Winnipeg when I was 18, 2 days out of high school, in my perfectly reconditioned 1968 Volkswagen Beetle, because my dad was a Volkswagen mechanic and still is 50 years later. And I arrived in Winnipeg, and this started my career, Dennis. I got a job, no schooling. I grew up in a family where that wasn't really an option in terms of income. There wasn't the marks, there wasn't the means, it just wasn't there. So I went to Winnipeg and got a job that summer, 2 days out of high school, at a tuxedo rental company. And it was such a great experience, Dennis, because in 1987, women weren't hired in the tuxedo business. And I actually got the interview because of my name, Darci, and my work experience of working in my dad's Volkswagen garage growing up. So when they saw my application come through, they thought I would be a young man.
Oh.
So it was really neat, because when I went for the interview, the gentleman said, "Oh, we'll stop you because we don't hire women." And I said, "Well, how about you give me a 20-minute interview?" Because I was always really, really resilient. And he said, "Yeah, sure." And I ended up buying the company from him when I was 24 years old. So it was just an incredible experience. And you know, Dennis, I've never been to post-secondary, but my management team had a combined experience of 125 years in the tuxedo business. And there's no textbook that could have taught me what those men taught me. And most importantly, every day they'd ask me what they could teach me today.
Good. And obviously you learned a lot about tuxedos. Well, it makes sense that drawing on old stereotypes. We're not supposed to do that anymore, but sometimes I still do, because I'm really old. A woman fitting, let's say, or telling a guy how a tuxedo looks and fits and feels is probably better than a guy trying to tell a guy how to wear a tuxedo. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. Well, and, it's a challenge that I have. I don't worry about gender. I don't worry about any of that, Dennis. No. I believe, let's just go out in the world and be kind, and it all works itself out. But when people say to me, Darci, it's our youth, they don't know how to work, I say, yeah, they do. It's just that we're raising them, number one, and I don't know that we do a good enough job of saying, what can I teach you today? And really, this knowledge we have when we're older, Dennis, and not sharing it, like, knowledge is power, and we need to share that. So anyway, I bought the company from those men, and then I moved my own store to Regina. So I was 24 years old. I'd had 6 years of intense learning in this company, and moved here in 1993 with a tuxedo store. Now, that was really unique for a young woman to have this tuxedo store. And so I opened my own tuxedo store, and then I wanted to put my wares in the bridal trade shows so that people knew I was in town and they could see my tuxedos.
Right.
And the local bridal shops wouldn't let me in.
Well.
So I thought, forget that. So I opened my own bridal show. So I had a tuxedo store and a bridal show, which we actually had to close last year because of COVID, so we'll be anxious to see what happens with that. And I became a speaker in the same week. Can you imagine? So I'd love to tell you the story of how I became a motivational speaker, but I'm not giving you much airtime, so please go ahead.
No, that's okay. I don't need the airtime. Darci Lang is with us, entrepreneur, speaker, and author. Ran a tuxedo business at the age of 18, basically, from there till 24, moved to Regina, and then became a speaker and an author. And the reason we're speaking today, one of many, is because of the book we have in front of us, Focus on the 90%. So when we're talking about 90%, you mean 90% good stuff, 10% bad stuff, forget about the bad stuff, concentrate on the good?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it's like this. When my father gave me a book, when in the inscription he wrote, "Today you turn 18, which means you stop blaming me for your life." And in the book, it was called Attitude is Your Most Priceless Possession. And in the book, it had this idea that we all hold this big imaginary magnifying glass out in front of us in our lives, and we have a choice what we focus it on: the positive, good, affirming, beneficial parts of our life, or the 10% not so good. And for some reason, Dennis, I was 24, I just sat up like, that book that idea is so great. So I started doing that, when I was 8, so I started carrying this magnifying glass around. Then my bank manager, so I bring the tuxedo store here, I'm running this tuxedo store bridal show, and my bank manager says, "You come into the bank and you seem so happy," as you would say, Dennis, bubbly. And we all know you had far from a perfect childhood, and you seem so happy and not delusionally happy. And what is your secret? And I told Ed this book idea, and he said, "That's amazing. What percentage of life do you think is great?" And I said, "Honestly, I think it's like 90-10. And he said, "Well, I think you're too happy, but why don't you come Friday and deliver that to my staff?" And can you even imagine?
Whoa.
Dennis says, "Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow.
That's it." 28 years later, my business has been 100% referral. Can you imagine?
So one person they tell, like that old commercial, they tell 2 people and they tell 2 people and so on and so on. Well, that's fantastic.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yes.
And there's some things I want to add there, that being from Saskatchewan, Dennis, is highly marketable. Because, and being younger then, I'm older now, but being younger then, and there's something about being from Saskatchewan. They know you're going to be easy to deal with. They know that you're going to be kind, and it's just been the base of my career. But the book, to answer your question for your podcast here, the Focus on the 90% book, I wrote the book you have in front of you in my first book to sell at the back of the room as a motivational speaker. So that was 13 years ago that I wrote that book, because our son John is 18, and I have the most adorable picture of him at 5 holding the first copy of my book in his little Spider-Man pajamas. So I wrote the first
I still
book.
wear Spider-Man pajamas. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I've been looking for a new set for him so I can reenact the picture, but he's not too excited about that at 18. But I wrote the first book simply for that reason, Dennis, because it's very popular as a speaker to have a book at the back of the room.
Right.
Then I'm blessed beyond that book is in its 7th edition now, so I updated it and freshened it as my children. I have an epic 18-year-old son, a beautiful 20-year-old daughter, and my husband and I have been married 25 years. Nice Saskatchewan farm boy. Every woman should marry a nice Saskatchewan farm boy.
Well, every guy should marry a Saskatchewan farm girl.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
See?
That's
there you
what
go.
I say. Yep. They're rough and ready and tough and steady and can do all the stuff I can't do. So.
Right on. So that was the story of the first book. And then 2019, now with COVID, my brain doesn't fire like it. What year are we? Oh, yeah. In 2019, I wrote my second book, which I call Living the 90%, because I needed to go a little bit deeper into the 10% challenges of my childhood and my adult life so that people knew a little deeper dive. Okay. And then this last year I wrote a leadership book called Lead the 90% because I was home for a year, grounded from COVID. And right now, Dennis, I'm writing my 4th book, which is called Embrace the 90%, and it'll be a woman's book. And I'm very excited to get that out to the world. So you talk, and then I will explain more the setup of the 90% for you, because I didn't do a good job of that yet.
Well, I think you did, but Darci Lang is with us talking specifically about focus on the 90%. And like you say, your cover of this one has the magnifying glass on it, focusing on the 90%. So that ties right into what you just said.
You bet. And everyone that hears me speak, because again, I've been blessed to speak for many years now, I give everybody a little mini magnifying glass. And my books are very much chicken soup for the soul. If you remember Jack Canfield, the look and feel of my books is the same. Like, I will make sure you get the others, Dennis, but I've got, the look is the same, but the colors change. And very proud of that. But the 90%, my hope and intention is that people will wake up in the morning, take out this imaginary magnifying glass, put it in front of them, and ask 2 questions. What is good today, and what can I control? And for me, that's the base of 90%. Because if you were really honest about your life, as we are here in this podcast, 90% of life is pretty great. But the 10%, especially in the time in the world where the 10% are bigger than they've ever been, for the most part, it's pretty good. Dennis, you and I are healthy. We don't have COVID. Our families are healthy enough to be on this podcast. We're both in our Saskatchewan homes. The list goes on and on. But it's such a human nature that we would wake up and see what isn't. That's what I'm really encouraging people to do.
I understand, and I agree, and I'm one of those guys who is always on the 10% of, woe is me, blah, blah, blah. But flipping through the book, there's lots of good things that popped into mind, and one of the first ones that I wanted to talk about was dear to my heart, quit cleaning. Tell me about that. Tell me about that.
Amazing. Well, Dennis, I will tell you about that, because here's the thing about, let me just firstly not gloss over that people don't have real problems. Like, people deal with addiction, depression, mental health, stress, aging parents, teenagers, health problems. I have been blessed with many, many growth opportunities in my life to practice what I preach. So, when people say, it must be nice to be happy, I say, no, it's not nice. It's a ton of work.
It is.
Like, being happy is a ton of work. And it's the choice that you need to make to decide that, are you happy? And if not, what could you do to wake up in the morning and say, what is good and what could I control to better your life? Because when we're better, everyone around us doesn't have to suffer for us drudging us through our lives, right?
Right.
So let's talk about cleaning. Cleaning's a perfect example of what I call my 3 times complain rule, Dennis.
Okay.
And you're probably got there too in the book. But the 3 times complain rule is I don't complain about anything in my life without 3 times without what I call laying that sucker out. So if I've complained about the fact that I have no time to clean my house, I don't do that more than 3 times. And I know this is an interesting example because I know it's not in everybody's budget, but I don't complain about that more than 3 times without laying that out and saying, okay, what do I need to do about this? What can I control? And what can I do to take this problem away from me? So that's why cleaning, it's just not something I've been doing because I'm so blessed with business, income to be able to do that. And then I'm not spending Saturday doing it when I could be walking my dog Holly.
Right. Okay. And what was I going to say? I had a perfect line here and I've lost it. Your husband and frogs. Let's get into that real quick because we can't escape that topic no matter what.
It's the best. Well, and because I've been traveling as long as I have, firstly, again, our children are 28 and 18, but when our children were born, my husband took a government leave from his job, which he never did go back to, but we traveled for 5 years as a family. So I actually took my family on the road 40 trips a year for the first 5 years of their life. So that was remarkable. And then when I went on the road by myself, when they got into the school system, my husband would be in charge 2 days a week. So I limited my travel to 2 days a week. I was only ever gone one night, which I've actually maintained pretty well in the last 28 years. But when I was gone, it was so fun when I left town, right? And they would build frog sanctuaries and catch frogs and bring them to middle-class suburbia here. They would build forts. My husband had a real struggle with mental health and depression in that time, and that was one of the many ways that he made sure that he was well and happy and hanging out with the kids in a positive way.
Well, like you said, you have 3 kids. He's just the oldest one.
Oh, that is just a complete understatement. You know it.
How about the doorknob theory? What's that one?
Oh, doorknob theory. And I want to tell you how I've adapted the doorknob theory, Dennis, during this COVID last year, too. The doorknob theory is, okay, so we go out in the world, we carry our magnifying glass out in front of us, we're nice to everybody. You know, as motivational speakers, we're not banging on the glass and yelling at co-op cashiers, right? Like, we're nice people in the world.
Yes.
But it's very important to me, and I think often, I call it feed me first, where I feed me mentally, spiritually, physically, socially, then I feed the 4-legged and 2-legged in my house, and then I feed the world, right? So it's important to me that I go out in the world, and I'm a very kind lady, I'm very proud of that, but that I have something left for our families, for my family, because I think often we feed the world, we give scraps to our family and then nothing to ourselves. So the doorknob theory allowed me, all these years I've been traveling, to drive and fly, and I put my hand on the door and I don't come in until I'm as positive as I was for the rest of the world that day. And that ability, sorry to cut you off, Dennis, that ability to stand at the door, and rather than thinking about the 10%, I stand and think about my 90%. And then I'm much nicer when I come in the door.
Well, I think for a lot of years I was, if I analyzed myself, I was the grumpy guy in the office, who was always trying to be like Hawkeye Pearson MASH or something, always trying to come up with the witty, quick, sarcastic saying, and always trying to prove he was different than everybody else and much above all of the riff-raff. And it didn't work out too well, but I kept at it. So that leads me to the question about the foreman story and into creating a happy workplace. So you got 2 foremen who show up. One is a grumpy old son of a gun, and the other one is happier. And obviously, the happy guy has better workers. Do you find that situation throughout your travels at various workplaces you go to?
Oh, yes. But the 2 things I want to say to that. It's only ever the 10% that are grumpy. And when people say, we have morale issues, I say, no, you don't. You have a pocket of people who are unhappy with themselves and not willing to do the very difficult deep dive work of changing the person in the mirror. And then they're coming to work unhappy, and then they're affecting and effecting morale. So it's really only 10%, but yet they have this powerful ability to win. And the impact of a grumpy foreman, as the impact of anybody who sees their life through a 10% lens, is quite profound, because firstly it affects your own self-worth, whether people want to admit it or not. And then it ripples too, as the foreman story demonstrates, it ripples to your coworkers, because we've all worked with somebody we just want to say, why don't you go home? Like, why are you still here? And then it ripples to our customers, because I've eaten 1,000 restaurants and diners across this great country, and if you've ever been served by a waitress or serving staff in a restaurant, Dennis, who clearly do not want to be there, I guarantee you that they... Right.
Yep.
But I guarantee you, if I took her or him for a coffee after work and said, is this what you wanted to do? They'd say no. And then if all you see is the 10, it affects you, everyone you work with, everyone you serve, and then you flop yourself down at your dinner table every night and you complain in front of your children about your job when you ask your children to go be happy in their job. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work.
Oh, boy.
It doesn't work that way. So if the guy wants to be grumpy or happy in the foreman story, that's his choice. And you can't change negative people, and they're like addicts. They have to want to. They have to wake up and say, oh my God, my behavior is affecting everyone around me in a negative way, and I don't want that. And how this affects this foreman's business, I don't understand how he doesn't get that. So there's your long answer.
Let's see, I'm making a note about being 18. You can't blame me anymore for your problems.
Right. Because a lot of people see their childhood through a 10% lens, and they have been blaming their family for about 40 years. And it's high time that we do the deep dive, again, my words, work on saying, okay, so do I see myself through a 90% lens or a 10% lens? Then do all that work, then you can come out into the world and see your job, others, and your family through a 90% lens.
Darci Lang is with us, entrepreneur, speaker, author, talking about Focus on the 90%, the book I have in front of me, and there's others out there. But these days, Darci, what's your daily routine like?
Oh, it's been incredible, because I live what I preach, Dennis, right? Wake up in the morning and say, what is good and what can I control? Imagine how important that's been in a year where we can control very little of what is happening right now, right?
Right.
So the ability to wake up in the morning and say, what is good? So I've been home for a year. I haven't been home for 28 years. So I have been home every week for a year. Again, I'm blessed to have wrote the third book. Now I'll be finishing my fourth book. I wouldn't have had time to do that, Dennis. When you travel every week, it's a disruption in your business, your daily business. My admin assistant and I have worked together for 28 years. We're crossing things off the list we've wanted to do for 10 years, Dennis. It's incredible. The lists for my husband are endless. We have dumped every closet. It's been a spectacular year. So my day is, I get up at 5 every morning. I go to bed at 9:30. I go to sleep by 10. I wake up at 5. Monday to Friday, I'm the most boring, disciplined human you've ever met. And then I'm super fun on the weekend. Super fun. So I wake up at 5 and I center me. And then I come into my office and feel very blessed with webinar work, writing. I walk my dog Holly, as you know, at 4 o'clock every day. And I just come back and I put my hand on the door, and I don't come in the house until I'm positive, because it's been tough on my family this year, Dennis. It's tough on these young people. My son didn't get a grad. My daughter was moving away. Her job was canceled. They need me to be a grounded, positive force, and I make sure I do something every day to invest in the person in the mirror, so I am that for them 90% of the time.
Darci Lang is with us, and we're gonna wrap it up here pretty soon, but these days everybody has a website, so how do we get in touch with you, Darci Lang?
Yeah, I'm Darci with an I, so DarciLang.com. You can, of course, go on my website as you suggested, or I'm on all the social medias. And yeah, just again, really grateful that you would interview a Saskatchewan author, thank you, and keep it local. I'm just so darn proud to be from here.
Well, as you've seen on the web, we have lots of Saskatchewan writers and musicians that are on the list there. It's not just writers as such, it's all sorts of different things. But back to the writing and publication process, just for a moment, I forgot to get into that. How do you, from start to finish, what's your process? You self-publish, I assume?
Yes, I've self-published all of mine, and honestly, this process for me, I am very, very blessed with a creative brain, and part of it is the quiet meditation and the prayer time in the morning. I'm a ruthless care of myself person, Dennis, like ruthless self-care, nutrition, sleep, exercise, all that. So I have very, very blessed with a brain that just dumps ideas. But I always set my books up. I don't think you and I could do this in this time, but my brain likes to live in different areas of our life. So different roles that we play would pretty much be the outline for most of my books. Is I want to take the whole person and have you look in the mirror, but then also look at, again, how you are at work with others and with your family.
And we're talking with Darci Lang. Focus on the 90% is the book we talked about. It's one simple tool to change the way you view your life. Darci Lang, Darci with an I, so that's darcilang.com or .ca?
.com, please.
.com, darcilang.com. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and just keep on keeping on. Maybe we'll talk again in another year or so when things might be a bit different.
I would love that, Dennis. Thank you for doing what you're doing to feature all of us.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.